the thought processes of the masses. And the way that this basically works is that they have the ability to insert into an individual's head in mass, meaning they can do this simultaneously to many individuals at once. And with that access, they can just start saying whatever they want in that individual's own voice. And people need to realize that this technology exists, and they need to consider how powerful the weapon this is. Imagine, anybody in this conversation right now, imagine you had this power at your disposal, what you could accomplish.
Could
already going to start building and doing some tests. Yeah.
Project Bluebeam. But as Eric showed, Project Greenbeam, in fact, from South
Project Godbeam.
Right. If I'm not mistaken, Jeremy, you do tile work as a professional.
I did for a long time. Yeah, it was a
okay.
Contractor.
Now imagine if you had this technology at your disposal. Wouldn't it be a lot easier for you to bring in tile clients and jobs if every single night they went to bed and you just started pumping into their head, Jeremy does the best tile work. Jeremy does the. Wouldn't your phone be ringing off the hook with clientele?
I don't know about that, man. I'd have to beam into all my competitors' heads that like some bad information or something.
Either way, but I'm just saying, like playing devil's advocate here. If you had this technology available, think of what you could accomplish. And I'm just suggesting this is already going on right now.
Oh, absolutely. Here in 2020, after the whole Havana syndrome thing came out, somebody actually released a patent on how to automatically identify who might be targeted by using remote sensing systems. And they give the full diagrams of exactly how they propose that this should be built and can work.
Yeah, there are corporations. There are articles on the internet as we speak about corporations discussing that they're going to get started on research and development on the ability to pump commercials into your brain while you're sleeping.
Which is totally sick.
All that being said, I have a question then. If you could match their frequency and send it back on that same sort of amplitude, could you not cancel out what they're doing to you?
You could actually invade. If you look at all of this stuff big picture, there's no firewall to the mind, and there's also no firewall to this connection. So this is where I express to people, when people say, what can we do about this? I say, know thyself. You have to learn which one of those voices in your head is not you, and control it. And that's your access point. Yeah, absolutely.
They show you exactly that right here. Does the participant feel angry? If yes, then you correct it by this factor. If not, then you correct it by this factor. And then there are different ways to actually channel and control this. So you can get a live feedback system. And with today's cell phone technology, basically having everything built into it, even the ability to pick up at a distance things like your heart rate, your breathing patterns, because the microphones are always on, they're listening for all that. It's very easy for them to tell whether or not you're getting excited and you're being stimulated. So this is definitely a patent that people should take a look at. I'm going to go ahead and copy that patent number and pop it into the chat for everybody if they want to read this, because here all the methods that are used are outlined pretty clearly here.
Yeah, my research shows that the ancient mystery schools of old, who had as their battle cry, know thyself, that this is the reason for this, is that way back when, these were techniques that could be applied by individuals who became adept at these skill sets. But now contemporarily, we've taken these techniques and turned them into technologies. So it just means that know thyself has become exponentially more important, as nobody is considering why.
Actually, I put it in the private chat because I am apparently not logged in here to post this in the public chat. So if anybody just wants to copy that number and pop it out there for people, then they can go do their research. So you just type this in and then you put the word patent after it. Google will pull it up and it will show you other relevant information as well.
So there was a whole sub-project of MK Ultra called MK Ultra Project 6, Subproject 68. If you look into MK Ultra Subproject 68, the CIA mind control research did a lot of work on electronics, electronics and signals and the effect of signals on human beings and other biological entities. So I don't think it stopped or ended there. I think especially with the amount of research that they do. So it's
of course not
that this is still going on
right
to a lot of ways. So that this is the whole thing that Camp Hero. If people have heard of Camp Hero out on Long Island. This was Montauk. This is, in the movie Stranger Things, when they go out on the end of the island and there's that facility where they do all the weird government and military research that the kids are from and everything. This was based on Camp Hero out on Montauk, where they did a lot of these, experiments for the military and stuff. So, look into that if you guys haven't already. So.
You can look up. You can go Google right now the Montauk Lighthouse, and you'll see the lighthouse, and then you'll see a military building right next to it in the same picture that no one discusses. That's the same height basically as the lighthouse. It's basically a giant. Think of it as a giant periscope. You have Brookhaven National Laboratories, you have Shoreham Nuclear Power Plant, and you have Wardenclyffe, which was Tesla's facility, which would be due west of Montauk Point. I would suggest that that's the starting point, the breach of a gun, and that Montauk Point, the lighthouse, that building that anybody can pull up and see, it's like a periscope. There's a giant linear accelerator underground, and when it gets to that building at Montauk Point, it changes 90 degrees twice and can be swept across the surface of the Earth.
There's actually a very important reason, too, for that location. Why Tesla put Wardenclyffe there was because it gave him a direct access point to the atmosphere. And it was really the perfect spot. So I'm sure they wanted to locate it there at Camp Hero because it was also completely ideal for doing the same thing that he was doing. It's just that they were using high-frequency pulse klystron radars, and they had a system of ampletrons, which are basically vacuum tubes that are like the size of a water heater. Like they're huge. And they had several of these things inside the facility with 4 million watts of power being pumped in just to run the damn transmitter.
Just as a side note of interestingness, George Washington's first act of the president as president of the United States was to go out to Montauk Point and commission a lighthouse.
Oh, that's funny.
Really?
Yep.
You want to talk about JFK's last meeting that he never made it to as well?
Absolutely, yeah. This is what I was just talking about, Lloyd Berkner and the ionospheric measurements and understandings. So there's a character by the name of Lloyd Berkner who went down to Antarctica with Admiral Byrd on his first mission. Or all of the missions, maybe. It's just I'm slipping right now. But Berkner was part of Byrd's expedition, and on the day that Kennedy got shot, Kennedy was on his way to go speak to Lloyd Berkner, and they were supposed to be divulging some of the biggest, newest, greatest secrets in the history of the world. The speech that the president wrote that day, which most presidential speeches are available to the public, that one's missing. No one's allowed to know what he was going to say that day when he went to go see Lloyd Berkner. The building that Kennedy was shot in was owned by Byrd's cousin, also by the name of Byrd, who had funded all of the Antarctic expeditions. This gets as shady can get. Everybody thinks that they know what happened to Kennedy and why he got shot, but it's a lot more complex than what people have considered because there's been so many smokescreen operations and stories constructed to get people off of the trail of what's really going on.
Yeah, well, also David Harold Byrd, who is, the nephew of Admiral Byrd, right? David Harold Byrd is one of the founders who set up the Civil Air Patrol.
Now, excellent. So
that's where David Ferry worked. He's the one who introduced Oswald to the CIA and recruited the Civil Air Patrol to the CIA. Now, three people from the Civil Air Patrol over there would wind up working at Atsugi Air Force Base. Okay, Atsugi Air Force Base was of course, the center for the U-2's Operation Oxcart U-2 spy program, right? So all those U-2 flights over the Soviet Union were launched out of Japan at Atsugi Air Force Base. and that's where Oswald was stationed as a Marine when he joined the Marines. And not only was he there, but he was there with another Civil Air Patrol cadet that was there with him, a guy named Roscoe White, who would end up being a Dallas police officer, working on the Dallas police force the day that JFK assassinated. So there's tons of interesting CIA connections to the Dallas police force that people have pointed out. Where a number of officers completely missing for the day, like doing weird, who knows what on the day of the assassination, and possibly killing Tippit and framing Oswald for the murder of J.D. Tippit. A whole bunch of other shady stuff that went on that day. But another guy, Kerry Thornley, was also at Civil Air Patrol with Oswald back at the time, and he would later go to Atsugi after Oswald and Roscoe White left there. So he was be moved in and stationed there, and then Kerry Thornley's testimony was later used by the Warren Commission to establish that Oswald was had communist sympathies. So it's weird how this all the people whose testimony comes against Oswald end up being coming under the Warren Commission. 80% of it relies on this testimony, which are all people that are deeply connected to the CIA, including Ruth Payne, the woman who introduced him and got him the job at the School Book Depository building. She looks to be a sort of go-between for or handler for Byrd in the CIA. She went out to meet with her sister in Virginia in September of 1963. Her sister turns out to Sylvia Hyde Hope turns out to be a CIA agent. And then on the way back from meeting with her sister in Virginia is when she goes and stops in New Orleans and picks up Marina Oswald and brings them back to Dallas to come live with them, and gives them a home and gives them a job, gets Oswald the job. Apparently Oswald also applied for a job during that month at the airport and got a call back from the airport. They wanted to hire him for a much better job than he would have had at the School Book Depository building. But for some reason, Ruth Payne never forwarded that telephone call to Oswald. Well, why not? Because her job was to set Oswald up for working in that building. And it just all comes full circle now that we have all these facts years later. And did you know that Byrd, so Harold David Byrd there, Hale Boggs. So while I got Hale Boggs up, I might as well mention him. Someone brought up Hale Boggs, who died with Nick Bejic. They both died in Alaska. Okay, so Hale Boggs was a Warren Commissioner. He was one of the Warren Commissioners, and he was outspoken at the Warren Commission said, there's problems with this government investigation of itself. Right. And he ends up disappearing. They never found the plane. Right. He disappeared in Alaska. And that was in 1972. So real interesting stuff when you look into the history of all the people involved in this and people who knew stuff that just mysteriously disappeared or wound up dead. Yeah,
this is all really big picture problem stuff, because it goes to technologies existing way before we could even imagine them happening, because B, we don't even have them available right now. I mean, people don't want to hear that anti-gravity devices have been around since probably the 1930s. People don't want to hear that we have basically, what we refer to as free energy devices, but just basically devices that give off god-awful amounts of power for very little energy input or expense, so to say. People don't want to hear that rich people have been doing this for a really long time and poor people are just being forced to pay their mortgages.
Well, I would say the average people want to hear, the citizens want to hear, certain military-industrial complex individuals don't want to hear, oil companies don't want to hear it, and they want to make sure that none of us believe it either.
I'd like to agree with you, but the general consensus from the folks that I talk to, it's I'm putting out the information, and it's it's almost like it's repulsive to them. They just want to get back to Monday Night Football and making sure their mortgage is paid. They certainly don't want to do anything with the information being presented to them.
Well, if you see it a little differently, if you say, do you like paying your electricity bill? And do you like how it's been going up steadily every single year? How would you like to fix that problem?
Oh, fair enough. Fair enough. Yeah, so, I mean, that's a more palatable way of putting it, I gather.
It's all in the presentation.
I think a lot of people don't want to admit to what's going on, because if they see that as a truth, then they have to look at themselves wondering, how did I miss that somewhere along the way?
I think you're right. I think that's a lot of what's going on. And I think the other secondary issue is that once they have an understanding of the problems of the world around them, this is how human nature gets worked against us. Once people do understand what's going on, they will actually do something. But this is where ignorance is bliss comes into play, and how we get manipulated so well, because they realize people would rather be ignorant and blissful than have to do something about it. So I think a lot of the information that I present is so distasteful that they're very rapid to discount it, so that the benefit of just not having to do anything about it. It's easier for them to figure out a way to pay their mortgage than it is to take back the power from the supposed elite that are mind-washing everyone every day.
Yeah, heaven forbid someone should take responsibility for themselves in their own life.
Yeah, it's crazy, man. Yeah, I don't expect normal people to just get up and fight for this, but it just bothers me when look
what happened in the last 2 years. Everybody was told to put on a mask and get a vaccine, and they did. That's insanity. That was
massive damages. Like more times out of not, or at least had a higher chance of coming down with the actual infection than had they not taken it. It was just it was fascist experimental virology, really.
Well, there
is can you guys see me on video right now?
Oh, let's get you up there as a solo.
And I'm moving around and stuff, because all of you guys have been frozen up on me since the 25-minute mark. So I'm going to try to bounce out and refresh real quick so that I can see if you guys are bringing stuff up to discuss.
Yeah,
so I'm going to bounce out and be right back.
Yeah, right back in and I'll fix it.
I'm going to do that. I'll be right back.
Reload, Eric.
You got it.
Now, Eric was talking about the possibility that these technologies were discovered a while back. You know, I just recently came across this on quantum vortices, right? Did you know the existence of quantum vortices was first predicted by this guy, Lars Onsager? Okay, this is a very interesting physicist, too, if you look into his career. In 1949, so this is 2 years after Roswell, and doing research on superfluid helium, and he comes up with this idea of quantum vortices, you know? Now, what's really interesting is that these quantum vortices, apparently, if you can get a lot of these on the surface of these superconductors, then they do weird things. Apparently, there's this guy who worked on a lot of this stuff and independently developed a lot of these theories on superconductivity back in the late 1950s. So this was 2 years after the anti-gravity conference at Chapel Hill, the secret gravity conference where they brought Feynman to and gave him the pseudonym Mr. Smith, and had all these top physicists meet and talk about anti-gravity. So a year later, they come up with this transformation. Now, all the new superconductive models and a lot of the new theory that's come out are actually recycling this old theory that was kind of very little known and swept under the rug, I guess, back in the 50s. So once again, you have technology that's withheld from the public sphere because it's being studied by, it's being studied by the black world and black programs and stuff is exactly what's going on. So the ideas of Onsager were further developed by Richard Feynman in 55, right? So this is 55 to 57. This is the time period when Richard Feynman's working for, he's going to the alibi room from Cornell. He just started at Cornell University and as a teacher. And he's involved back and forth with these private aerospace firms and these people that are working on anti-gravity secretly. So you get into this stuff about